Hi Instagrammers, hi YouTubers, hi Facebookers, how are you? This video is brought to you by Danny Langrishbeard, who gave me the idea for this video, and another one I will be doing hopefully tomorrow. So today is 30th of June 2023. It is the last day of Pride Month, and tomorrow, the 1st of July, is two big things for the LGBTQ community in Southampton and in London. It is London Pride that's taking place in the city, in the capital, and People's Pride are opening up their new store and outreach centre in the Marlins tomorrow as well, on the 1st of July 2023. So those are two good things. Now, this video, inspired by Danny, the host of the LGBT show Spectrum on Voice FM, and also my colleague, not just on the radio station but on Pride, on the Pride Committee of Southampton Pride. He gave me the idea for this video, but this is a slight twist on the video idea that he came up with. This one is about the post-war period, the modern period in Southampton of LGBTQ groups, mainly trans groups, in the city from the mid-60s to the present day. So a lot of people don't know, but there is the Beaumont Society. I believe that's how you pronounce the name. They were set up in the mid-60s, and they really are the first kind of transgender organisation of its kind anywhere in the world, especially within Europe. It was a global community, but they held their first annual meeting, their first official annual meeting, in the Southampton Hotel in Southampton in 1966. There's a little bit of trivia for you. They're a distinguished society. They are still in function now, still going now. And as I say, they started in 66, and they held their first conference here at the Southampton Hotel, which is no longer there. I believe it's been demolished now. The next thing that happened to do with the trans community in Southampton was in the 70s, the Mayflower Group was set up. Now, the Mayflower Group was really for cross-dressers, but as it's moved on in time, it's progressively become a group for cross-dressers and trans women, predominantly trans femme people, and they've been running, I think, since the mid-70s. They used to, I don't know if they still do, used to hold a disco every month in Totton, which is just the other side of Southampton, and that would be their annual gathering when everybody would meet up, get drunk, have a party and have a disco. They would hold social groups in and around Southampton and the surrounding areas, and they were to some degree the first port of call for anybody thinking of transitioning back in the 70s, 80s and 90s and the early 2000s. It's very warm in here, so if you see me perspiring, I do apologise. They weren't predominantly set up at first for trans women. They were predominantly set up, as I say, for cross-dressers, but they've morphed since then. Now, I've tried to look online for the three groups I'm going to talk about. Well, technically four groups I'm going to talk about. But there isn't much. The Beaumont Society had some good stuff on their website and gave me a gist of what the society is about nowadays and a brief bit of their history. I can't find anything on the Mayflower Group in Southampton. There's nothing online. So that was the Mayflower Group, and they held it strong for about 30 years. Now, the next big thing that happened in Southampton was that there used to be a mental health house where you could go and do art and psychology and eat in a community cafe and do music groups and photography groups and poetry groups and reading groups and book groups and stuff like that for mental health patients in the community of Southampton. Now, back in, this is the early part of my first transition, so 2004, 2005. I think it was 2004 when I first came out. At Bedford House, there were only two trans women trying to use the facilities there. It was me and another lady called Diane. That's not her name anymore, so she's changed her name. The two of us were operating in an environment which was new. It was slightly before the Gender Recognition Act, I believe it was, in 2004 was passed. The Labour government at that time was rolling back legislation against trans people and LGBTQ people in general, and making it more acceptable for us in the community and giving us rights. And the group at Bedford House was the first group of its type in Southampton. It was called the GLBT group. See, even the anachronism back then was still in its infancy to some degree. It was called the GLBT group. And it was where all members of the mental health community in Southampton that used Bedford House facilities, if they identified somewhere on the spectrum of the LGBTQ community, they would use and access the groups. And we would have regular meetups at the house every week. We would go to local LGBTQ friendly establishments in the city, like the London, or there used to be a cafe at the bottom of the high street in Southampton, which was LGBTQ friendly, and we would drink in there, and we would have social events and gatherings and stuff like that. That group ran for a number of years, but then eventually the house was closed by the council because they didn't want to pay for it anymore, and they wanted to pay for a car park. So they bulldozed the house, and we lost a very valuable facility, and along with it, one of the first LGBTQ groups in Southampton catering for the whole community, even if it is just within the mental health sphere. Shortly after that, Chrysalis was formed. Now, Chrysalis was formed by two women, one cis, one trans. They got together at their local church, and they came together to create a safe environment for predominantly trans women. Now, I like to think of it, when I used to go in the early years, as the finishing school for trans women. They would teach us life skills, they would teach us electrolysis stuff, healthcare, makeup tips, all the basics, clothing tips, all the basics. Now Chrysalis was formed in 2005. I am not sure exactly when the first meeting was held. It was either 2005 or 2006, but my claim to fame at this point is that I was either the second or the third trans girl in through the door at the very first meeting of Chrysalis. I attended Chrysalis for about 2-3 years, and then I was forced to detransition. Look back at my detransition video, which is quite popular on my channel. It will explain everything. When I retransitioned in 2012, I went back to Chrysalis. The organisation I found hadn't really moved on much since 2005-2006, but it had started to include trans men, but not non-binary folk. So it outreached to trans men. For me, Chrysalis, when it got going during the 2012 to 2017 period, was a social group. We didn't really go for the advice they gave us. We listened to the talks that were given, but really we went to socialise, to mix, to share numbers, to talk to each other, and then every week that we had the meeting, we would then go off to Metrics in Southampton and have a coffee or a cocktail, and we would have a little bit of a get-together afterwards. So it was really social. But one of the founders of Chrysalis, Diane, didn't design it as a social group. She designed it like it was supposed to be a finishing school for trans women, to teach us how to become proper decent women. Some of you know the history of Chrysalis and what has transpired. So in around 2017-2018, we have what I like to refer to as the Chrysalis coup, when the organisation was, by legal and democratic means, taken away from the founder of Chrysalis and changed into a proper streamlined charity-based organisation with outreach for the whole trans and non-binary community. It changed its name in 2018. Well, technically it was finished, it ended, and it was wrapped up in 2018, 2019, and then became Beyond Reflection. So for that interim period when it was still Chrysalis, from about 2017 until 2018, I was a trustee, along with a number of my friends and colleagues in other groups were trustees. It was a good charity. The prospects it had before developing into a nationwide charity were there. At the time, let me mop my furrowed brow because it's so warm in here. At the time, Chrysalis, when it changed to Beyond Reflection, was basically dealing with people in Hampshire, Basingstoke, Winchester, Southampton and Bournemouth. Now it's much more nationwide and has an outreach much more nationwide. So yeah, as you can see, there has been, since '66, when it comes to trans representation in Southampton, it has been quite big. Me personally, my first experience with it was before any groups were set up. You just had the Beaumont Societies. This is before Chrysalis and before the GLBT group at Bedford House. The only connection I had with any sort of trans scene in Southampton was going to the London on an evening, normally a Thursday or a Wednesday, and sitting with all the trannies. We called it the tranny table. Sitting with all the girls on the table. There was a mixture of us. Some of us were trans women and some of us were cross-dressers. And we would party and we would drink and we would socialise and we would chit-chat, and then we would all go our separate ways, or groups of us would go off to the disco in Totton if it was on. I never went. I went to one Mayflower group and was made to feel very unwelcome. So my first experience was with the trans girls as a social group, just getting together in the London Hotel in Oxford Street in Southampton. So the scene in Southampton, when it comes to organisations, has been pretty well represented since '66. The Beaumont Society's first one, then the Mayflower group, then the GLBT group in Bedford House, then Chrysalis, and now Beyond Reflection. And now there's a multi-plethora of groups in the city that cater for trans people, and a multi-plethora of trans prides and normal, ordinary LGBTQ plus prides. So yeah, that is a brief history of trans representation in Southampton. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry there's no pictures or anything. That's going to be in the next video, where I'm going to do a look around the city at all the LGBTQ venues that are still open in the city and that cater for the community. So hopefully you'll join me for that. I hope you enjoyed this and you got something out of it. Much of what I was telling you was anecdotal knowledge from my own head and my own experiences. As I say, I couldn't find much online about the history of different individual groups. And although back when I was a trustee, there was a plan to do a comprehensive audio-visual history of Chrysalis and then into Beyond Reflections, I don't think it was ever done because I've never found it online. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please like, share and subscribe, and I will see you again very soon, everybody. Goodbye.